Okay, I'm hoping everyone's going to be able to see this. Oh, good. Okay, and if I'm back here, perfect. Okay, so let's see. Where's my pens? My pens. And let's scooch you in just a second. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. So, this morning we're going to be talking. Look what I got, guys. I was so excited about this last night. Except my dog ate my erase board pen. So, oh well. But so we have this right now, which will be fabulous for in just a second. Hopefully, I'll get to use it. And then I also got some paints last night for a little visual demonstration I want to show you guys. So thank you guys for coming, and I'm really excited about what we're going to be talking about this morning. So today, what I've decided for these live streams, and it might change over time, and especially if we kind of get a community of people who want to discuss certain things, I'm just totally open to discussing whatever you guys want to talk about. But one of the things that I'd like to do is read some old stories at the beginning, kind of let everybody get a chance to jump on, and then we'll go ahead and have our discussion part at the middle. So probably about 15 to 30 minutes in. So what we're doing today is I was going to read to you guys The Animal Family, which is not George Orwell's The Animal Farm. That's a completely different book. But it's I was not able to get it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read a couple of short stories which really made a great big impact on me, and they're things that I still remember to this day. And when I was younger, I was schooled for, well, I've been in every kind of, I always say I've been in every kind of setting for school except for boarding school. I've done it all. So I've done private school, homeschool, co-op school, online school, public school. I've done it all. And I'm very grateful for all the experience that I did have, because I was able to see different systems and how they worked. And so I think that one of the things that people, if they're locked into one system for their whole life, they get very stunted. And you only view the world through a certain lens, which is really unfortunate, because you want to be able to see the world through. You want to be able to see the world in a really well-rounded way. So what we want to do is, even when we're older, what I always tell because I have a lot of dance students and just different people that I talk to, and what I tell them is that I'm in 19th grade right now, which just to me means that, I'm still learning, I'm still in school. So next year I'll be in 20th grade, and it will never stop. You just always keep learning. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into our stories. So this is called The King's Daughter and Other Stories for Girls. So these were there were lots of these books that I read when I was younger. And they were compilations of old stories. A lot of them were from like the primers from the 1800s. And I really appreciate these stories, because this was, a lot of these stories were from a time where America was going through the Industrial Revolution. There still were not like good child labor laws, and so there was a lot of hardships for children, especially who were in lower class families. And then there's also, it showed the gamut of human interaction with, the middle class and some of the upper class families as well. But I think a lot of times we lose, in our minds today, somebody who's poor maybe doesn't have an iPhone or a television, and we forget that poor, in America, used to mean that they were, living on the streets or living in a very, very crowded apartment. Oftentimes, if there was sickness in the family, they couldn't afford to go to the doctors, and it was very difficult to get medicine. It was difficult to put food on the table. Even just as recent with the Great Depression, we've had, actual real hardship and poverty. And so that's something that I just always want people to keep fresh in their minds and to remember, because without that sense of grounding in actual human suffering, I think we become really posh, and we're sitting on our little, fluffy pillow clouds, and we forget what suffering actually is, and it makes us less less connected to the things that matter, I think, because we start squabbling over things that just don't matter. Actually, there's a great short film. I'll link to it. I'm gonna write this down. It's by Steve Cutts, and I don't agree with everything that he does because he's quite environmentalist, but he really does a good job of showing us the shallowness of the modern lifestyle. And he did a short film a couple of weeks ago called Happiness. And it's really, it literally shows rats. It's like little cartoon rats, and they're going through the rat race of life, searching for happiness everywhere. And I really like the way he depicted everything. So I am going to put that into the link of the description. But I think the reason why that to me is so important is because people are searching for happiness, searching for fulfillment in material things, and they're forgetting to cultivate the self. You know, it begins and it ends with you. You know, you open your eyes when you're born, and you go through this whole journey, and then eventually you're just left with yourself when you close your eyes and you die. You know, like the only person who walks through that tunnel with you is, you know, I mean, you know, unless you have God, is you. So anyway, your journey is your own. It's very personal. All right, so this is going to be the first story that we're going to read, and this is called Nothing Finished. Now, if you are a procrastinator like me, or you have a tendency to start a lot of projects and then not finish them, this is the story for us, guys. So, and I like to show the illustrations because I think that illustrations are important. So it's just a little, I don't know if you guys can see very well, it's a little workbox with a bunch of things in it. So it's called Nothing Finished. I once had the curiosity to look into a little girl's workbox, and what do you suppose I found? Well, in the first place, I found a bead purse, about half done. There was, however, no prospect of finishing it, for the needles were out, and the silk upon the spools all tangled and drawn into a complete wisp. Laying this aside, I took up a piece of perforated paper, upon which was wrought one lid of a Bible, and beneath it the words, I love, but what she loved was left for me to imagine. Beneath the Bible lid, I found a stocking, evidently intended for some baby foot, but it had come to stand just upon the little heel, and there it seemed doomed to remain. Near to the stocking was a needlebook, one cover of which was neatly made, and upon the other, partly finished, was marked, To my dear. I need not, however, tell you that all that I found there, but this much I can say, that during my travels through that workbox, I found not a single article complete. And silent and as dumb as they were, these half-finished, forsaken things told me a sad story about that little girl. They told me that with a heart full of generous affection, and with a head full of useful and pretty projects, all of which she both had the means and the skill to carry into effect, she was still a useless child, always doing but never accomplishing her work. It was not a lack of industry, but a lack of perseverance. Remember, my dear little friends, that it matters but little what great thing we undertake. Our glory is not in that, but in what we accomplish. Nobody in the world cares for what we mean to do, but people will open their eyes to see what men and women and little children have done. And so this story, and I did want to preface this, I wrote down in my notes, preface about the language. When I was little, I was very into vocabulary, but I think for kind of we all go through phases, right? And we go through phases of, you know, pride and, I'm sorry. We go through phases of pride, and then it comes down, and, you know, we go through things. And so, you know, I used to really like kind of showy vocabulary, and what I was very frightened to learn later on was they are actually taking away the vocabulary from us. And I'm very interested in the study of feral children, and the reason for it is because what I see happening with people because of neglect and because of the lack of human interaction, I see more feral tendencies in children and adults who are not getting proper human interaction. And to me, that's very intriguing because it shows that, you know, even with some human interaction, if you're not having the right kind or enough, you still have some feral tendencies. And so somebody's yelling downstairs. But without the proper human interaction, you get those feral tendencies. And one of the problems with feral children is they have a very difficult time speaking, and they have after a while, even if you take one of those children and you put them into a home with people, is they will have a hard time getting their thoughts into words. And so that to me is very startling, because if you take a human being and you limit their vocabulary, you're limiting their ability to have a wider range of thought, right? So, and you might be able to think a certain, concept, but if you don't have the words for it, or a way to express it, then, and art is always about finding ways to express your thoughts and emotions. And so it's not just language, but language is very, very important, because it's the only concrete thing we have, right? Until we can communicate telepathically, we have to be able to have a concrete way to, have emotion, or to communicate emotions to each other. And, why do relationships and things, why are those so difficult? Because people have a hard time communicating. And the more they can limit the amount of words that we can tell to each other, the more they can limit our information, which means the more that they can limit our quality of living. Because if you the broader base you have of knowledge, the broader base you have of ideas, the higher your quality of life is, and also your relationships are going to be better, because the more terms you have for communicating something to someone, the better relationships you're going to have. And one of the things that's really sad to me is they're cutting off the history that we have, like in our old books, and all these wonderful lessons that that wonderful, beautiful writers who had the time to think. I mean, people nowadays don't take time to think for themselves anymore. We're constantly being bombarded and being told what to think. So people way back when who went and sat on mountaintops, and people who sat by the ocean, and they were thinking about things, and they were talking to other people, and they were intuiting things. They were the people who wrote things down. Okay. And then we have all these wonderful stories and and poems and all these things, and all the modern readers cannot read and understand what they were writing about, because the language is so different, and because people are not communicating it well to one another. So to me, I want to be able to expand people's vocabulary with, especially with my poetry or my writing, not because I'm trying to be highfalutin and showy. It's because I'm trying to give people something that they can grab onto, and something that will help them access more information from the past. So that's my goal. Anyway, so when I read these stories, I want you guys to, I don't want it to feel stuffy. I really want you to try to grasp, even if the language is old, we're trying to access information from the past. It's like a code that you have to be able to crack in order to reach further into the past and get more information. Okay, so the next one that we're going to talk about is the impossible yesterday. And again, I'm going to show you illustrations, because illustrations are important. So there's a little girl, and there's a little girl and her mama. All right. The impossible yesterday. She was a tiny girl playing by herself in a wide grassy yard. The older children had gone to school, but she, too young for that, was busying herself putting in order a playhouse in an arbor, arranging it as nearly as possible as it had been the day before, when she and 2 or 3 little mates had enjoyed such a merry time there. To and fro trudged the tireless feet, patiently the small hands worked, and at last all was complete. Then the young worker looked about her, and slowly a shadow of disappointment crept over the face that had once been so eager. Something was lacking. Everything was in the remembered order, but it did not seem the same. She studied it for a minute or two, and then walked away and sat down on a sunny doorstep. The mother found her there a little later, a listless, quiet little figure. "Are you tired of your playhouse already, dear?" she asked. The childish eyes were uplifted with a look of wistful wonder in them, and the answer came slowly. "I can't do it. I can't make yesterday over again." It was the hopeless task that in one form or another we all undertake, and with which many darken their whole lives because they will not learn that it is an impossible one. Yesterday's roses died with the day. Yesterday's manna was only for yesterday's need, but there are new flowers and new food for today from the same gracious hand that bestowed the other, if only we will go cheerfully and trustingly forward. The treasures and pleasures we have had are for the memory and thanksgiving, but the moment we sit down beside them to grieve or to try and reconstruct them out of their ruins, we have changed them from a blessing to a hindrance. We cannot make yesterday over again. And I think this is very, very hard for artists, because we're constantly trying to do that, right? We're constantly trying to remember things and to encapsulate them. And if you get caught trying to do that too much, you forget to live in the moment, because it is important to live in the moment, but you appreciate the you remember the past, appreciate the moment, plan for the future. You need to have that trinity of things all in that order, because if you don't remember where you came from, you're going to repeat the same mistakes, right? Let's imagine that, if every single day I woke up and I could not remember anything that I'd done the day before, I would probably repeat a bunch of mistakes, and I already do that enough, right? We already repeat enough mistakes. We don't need to do that more. But if you purposefully are trying to forget everything that happened to you yesterday and just blank out, then you're never going to learn from those things and bring them into the present, and then take from the present and plan for the future. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to be? And artists especially, sometimes I think we camp out too much either in the past or in the moment. Because the past can be really tempting to camp out in because it's safe. We already know what happened. And so, you've learned not to anticipate, you've learned to just reflect. So you're looking back on yesterday and, oh, wasn't that a wonderful time? Or even camping out on sad feelings from the past. That's just dangerous because it's keeping you from your present. But if you're living too much in the present and you're just like, I'm just going to do what's going to make me happy right now, well, then you're living emotionally paycheck to paycheck. And eventually, you're going to get overdrawn, and you need to, have a cushion for the future. And if you're always perpetually planning for the future, but you're not doing anything in the moment, nothing's ever going to get done, right? So, but I loved this story because I used to be very much trying to, if there was something good, I would always try to recreate it again and again and again, instead of just letting that flow come. And what I've really learned with art and writing and just, and relationships and just things about life is that I'll have to find it. There's a Victoria Erickson quote. I wonder if I can find it right now. Hang on. But there is this, there's this wonderful quote by this poet, Victoria Erickson. I think I found her on Pinterest. And let's see, Victoria Erickson, people are rivers. But when you're caught up in the flow of actual creativity, you'll start to, what is it right there? Let's see. Okay. Well, maybe I'll find it for next time if I can't find it now. I don't want to waste time on that. But it's called People Are Not Homes. People are not. But when you're in the creative flow of things, a lot of times what I'll notice, if I'm doing something good, there will be an idea that I'll see in somebody else, and they've already latched onto the idea that I had. For example, I had written something. Yeah, I can't find it, but I found her website, so I'll find it for us later. But what was I saying? Oh gosh, I just derailed myself. I just totally derailed myself. Oh yeah, so I was writing something. It was one of my novels, and in the novel, these characters, after they would interact with this kind of like the creator of their world, their eyes would get this. It was a quality, not a color, but it was, and I called it blue, and it just meant that their eyes were clearer. But it was blue. It was like the word blue with 2 dots over it, like that. Can you see that? So it was, that's what I called that quality in their eyes. It was just a clarity and a brightness to them. And I don't know if you've ever met someone who had really clear, bright eyes where you could just see right into their soul and you felt a connection with them. Versus someone who's, I call it kind of fish-eyed, when people are, they're tired or listless or just seem kind of purposeless. And I was reading another book, and this book had a very similar thing, except it was actually a color, but they said that once they talked to their their creator of their world, their eyes would literally turn blue. And I just thought that was really interesting because I was like, oh, okay, so there's some universal thread there in the art sphere, in the I don't really know how to describe it. A lot of times I think of it like a cave that we're all going through, and there's these different threads that people are following, and some people are following the same one, some people deviate from different ones, but they're supposed to lead you to to like the place of ultimate creativity. And when you know that you're following the right thread for you, then you're going to run along with other people who are like, you're like, oh yeah, that I recognize that. That's a similar thing that I'm doing. So that means that I'm on the right path. And the other way to think about it is like a river. When you're caught up in the creative flow, you're going down this river, and someone might like pass down the path further than you, and maybe they're drawing a tree or whatever, and then you go down that and you start thinking of a tree. So it's just all being in this same flow, and you're all going towards the same direction. But yeah, that's how I know that I'm doing it right, because a lot of times I think artists if you're trying to impose yourself into the art, it never works out quite as well than just allowing what is supposed to be, if that makes any sense. A lot of times artists get really caught up in like trying to be original. I don't really care about being original as much as I care about my art being good, like quality. That's what I care about. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into a couple of things, shall we? So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was art mechanics versus art. So when you go to elementary school or middle school, one of the things, or even college, when they start teaching you art in college, I really don't like it that they just say, oh, hang on, I gotta fix this. Oh, can I do that? Will that work? That will work. I really don't like it when they just say art, because there's two different things that you're learning. There's art mechanics, which is how to draw something, right? Like, I don't have that great of art mechanics when it comes to drawing. I have some, but not a lot. So you can teach someone art mechanics. It's not that difficult. So you can teach someone how to draw, like an oval face, how to do the oval eyes, and they probably should be lower. I'm sorry, dear actual drawers of the world. And then you have your nose, and you have your mouth, and you can put a mole, you can do the hair, right? So terrible art mechanics here. Can you guys see this? I hope you guys can see this. I think you can. So this is terrible art mechanics, right? But when we are doing, oh, that was a nice catch on my part. Okay, when you're doing art mechanics, you're just working with the figures and the shapes. You're not worried about, this isn't saying anything right now. But if I wanted to take this figure and make it say something, then that's when it starts becoming art. So like if I wanted to draw something that is, has an emotion tied to it, or has a higher plane of thought, that's when it starts becoming art. This is not art. This is just art mechanics. So same thing with sculpting, painting, drawing, even music. Think about, when if your kid comes home from middle school with their, blessed trombone, and they're practicing downstairs, they're just practicing their art mechanics. They're not an artist yet, but maybe someday, with skill and with feeling, they could become a really good artist with that musical instrument. It just depends on how determined they are and what's inside of them, right? So but just because someone has, this is the thing, just because someone has poor art mechanics doesn't mean that they can't be a good artist. Someone might have, mediocre skills when it comes to the art mechanics, and maybe they're not like the greatest, painter in the world, but their painting really said something to you. And so I wanted to show one of my pieces really quick. Now, I am not a painter. I'm not someone who paints all the time. I do it sometimes for a lot of times when I'm going through something that I feel like I can't express in words or dance, or it's another way of getting something out. And I really would encourage you, don't limit yourself if you feel like, oh, I'm a painter. Oh, well, okay, that might be part of what you do, but you're an artist. And an artist isn't limited by their mechanics. You can always learn a new form of mechanics. That's what I think is really fun, is that, as an artist, I don't even know what I am first. It doesn't matter. I'm just an artist. I'm a poet. I'm a dancer. I'm a writer, I'm a painter, you know, there's mechanics to help you, you know, and I do video and photography, and there's so many different ways to express yourself. But don't limit yourself. If you might do mostly one thing, like right now the bulk of my work is dance, but I'm not just a dancer, I'm an artist. And so you need to see what other ways you want to express yourself and what other mechanics you could work on. But I'm going to show you guys a piece really quick that I had. And my mom is completely different than I am. She is not, she does not have the artistic bent. She's very athletic, so her mechanics are very rooted in the physical, but she's very good with people. She's very good with people. And so I would say she's a communications artist, really, because she's able to pull things out in people, you know, like people are her canvas almost, you know, and then she pulls things out, and then, you know, even with aesthetics, she's good with, maybe not so much doing clothing, but like with makeup, she's very good at seeing the face of someone and then knowing what to put on that face and knowing how to draw out their better qualities. So she's very, very gifted in that area. And I don't believe that people are like completely not artistic. I think that some people have, you know, the gift of artistry, and so that's the bulk of their work. But I think that you can do anything with, you know, anything with a flair and anything with a little bit of art, because it means skill. It means, I think we should do our definition of art really quick. What was I thinking? So defining art, and you know, it's my definitions are always a little fluid, and you know, and I have no problem with disagreeing with my, you know, like future self. If you're watching this, I have no problem with disagreeing with you, you know. So I will probably change as I get older, but these are the things that I have found that art is to me at the moment. So art to me is connecting the dots. You know, finding the meaning, and you know, like when you're a kid and you're at Red Robin or a restaurant and they give you those you know, connect the dot pictures. When you start connecting everything and the picture starts to come out, that's what art is for me. It's like, you know, you're connecting these dots from emotion to mechanics to another person, back to myself, back to a universal truth, and then everything starts to intersect on maybe just a piece of paper, and it's amazing. So you're connecting the dots, whatever that means to you. Deeper thought. When you create a good piece of art, it's and sometimes, and I was frustrated with myself the other day because I thought, well, sometimes art doesn't do all these things. Like I might look at a photograph and maybe I'm not inspired with a deeper thought, but maybe I'm inspired with a deeper emotion. But I feel like sometimes that is a thought. You know, you're able to, it's a deeper sensing, it's a deeper connecting with the things around you. So it doesn't have to just be in your mind, it can be in your soul, in your spirit, in your heart. It's inspiring, right? So that's what I mean with that. It moves you to a certain action. So that could be an emotional action, it could be a physical action, like, oh, I need to get out and do something. It could be, you know, moving to an action just within yourself, like, you know, bettering yourself. Reflective, it makes you reflect. It's either having you reflect on yourself, reflect on the world around you, reflect on the people around you, reflect on a circumstance around you. It's making you think about something in a new way. I think art is all about perspective. And one of my favorite things when I was a little girl was to lay down on the floor and look up at the ceiling. And imagine that I was walking around on the ceiling with, like, you know, the what do you call that, like the chandeliers, like when they're upside down, they look really cool. And it, you know, it's impossible, well, I guess not impossible, because they can do things with chains and stuff now, but the chains look like they're, you know, it looks like it's standing up, right? And I used to just find that so fascinating. And then the different steps, like if you look on your ceiling, there's these drop downs a lot of times that you know, to actually walk around on it would be kind of frightening, but really fun, because I would think in my mind, how would I get down from that step, and how, you know, and I think that, you know, that childlike wonder is what I'm always trying to put into my artwork, because it's just a change of perspective. All I was doing was laying down on the floor. It's not that hard to change your perspective. It's just, do you have the imagination to do it? That's the thing. Meaning. So, and this can be positive or negative, as we're going to discuss in just a little bit. What is the meaning behind your art? Does it have something to do with making yourself better or worse? Does it have something to do with generating more or less purpose? So you want to be able to have, if you're someone who wants to contribute to society in a positive manner, what do you want your artwork to say? What do you want to propagate? What do you want to do? And what emotions do you want to pull out of people? What do you want them to, what do you want more of? Because when you create artwork, it's almost like making a child. You're taking something from yourself and you're imprinting it onto your work, and then you're spreading it around to other people. It can be like, good or bad bacteria. What do you want to spread around? Unfolding an emotion versus giving an emotion. I think this has to do with propaganda, and one of the things that I'm really okay. Sometimes I think we need a little propaganda, and when I say that, what I'm talking about is when you go to a workout class, you want pump it up music, right? You want music that's going to make you go harder, faster, and all those things. And so in a sense, you need a little bit of like get up and go propaganda. But I don't want to be listening to that all the time, because then it's cluttering my mind and I'm not able to have a quiet moment. I want to do a video on the last EDM song I ever listened to on the radio. I listened to underground EDM, but not the popular stuff. Yeah, I just had a really interesting experience with that, because I listened to EDM for an entire year. That was all I listened to. But when you unfold an emotion for someone, what you're doing is you are inviting them into a space where they've probably already had this emotion, or maybe they had this emotion but were not able to express it, because we as artists, there's this huge bank of emotions that we don't have words for yet, and we may never have. One of my favorite things is to find the really obscure words, because there's a lot of them out there from other languages and even in the English language, and one of them that I absolutely love is sonder, and that means when you are thinking of when you, if you've ever looked out your car window, and I remember this happened to me the first time probably when I was about 5. I was sitting in the parking lot. We were pulling away from a store like Walmart or something, and suddenly I became aware of every single person in the parking lot and all the people in the cars, and I thought, whoa, how many people are sitting in this parking lot or have a car in this parking lot, and I will never know all their stories. And every single one of them has a story like me. And that just, like, I just had an existential crisis right there at 5 years old. I was just blown away, And so there's words like that we, that you might have an emotion for, but maybe, until someone tells you the word or shows you the art piece, it feels like you're missing a part of you, because they're like, I feel this thing, but I don't know what it is. And it's frustrating me. And so that's why when we find a song that resonates with us and you're like, oh, this feels like this, or oh yes, this is like what I've always needed. Like a lot of times people will say that to me, like, oh, this is the song I always needed. Because it's unfolding an emotion that maybe is in the shared human experience, but wasn't available just for snacking on. Like that's the hard part about emotion, is that I think a lot of times we like to snack on emotion. You go and you want to feel a certain thing, especially as an artist, but you have to figure out how to encapsulate it. It's like a butterfly that flies around and you're like, oh, caught it, And the thing is to keep it alive, right? Not pin it on a card so much, but it's difficult to do that, to save the magic of something. But giving an emotion to someone, like we see this in political pieces, right, where you're handed, like, here's a cup of anger, here's a teaspoon of bitterness, or like with romance novels and books and movies, like, here's your, perfect little petite four of, romance, or here's your little margarita of romance, and it's so canned and you can eat it, but it's not your emotion, right? So I think good art helps you experience your own emotion through somebody else's emotion. So anyway, I was wanting to show you guys this piece of artwork that I did. So I drew and painted this at a time where it was a very difficult time in my family, and I was having a lot of panic attacks. And I think that artistic people are very prone to that kind of thing, because we are sensors of the world around us. And so when you are an overly sensing person, you know, you're like a computer that's running nonstop and trying to take in all this sensory information, and then at some point when the circuit goes too fast, it just kind of fries. So, but I've been able to, my mom really helped me a ton. She really healed me through supplements, good, good diet, getting back on a good sleep schedule, and exercise. And I really do believe in those things, and getting outside, and then also being able to express yourself. And so I'm very, very grateful to her. So Mama, I love you, and thank you so much for that. So anyway, what I was trying to do with this piece, I wanted to leave it very minimalist, but I was trying to make it seem like make it feel. It's interesting when I look at it reversed, it looks off center, but when I look at it this way, it looks more centered. That's interesting to me. So what I was trying to do was get people to feel how, like when all the senses are coming here in this way, and you feel blank, and and like you see like kind of the quivering lip and the wide eyes. And me, I have to have words, so I put it on the eyelids. For the eyelashes, I just used words, and it says what it feels like to be afraid of everyone. And then I had the eyes be kind of like a little bit bloodshot, but I wanted to leave them without a lot of color. And then I wrote to hide because there is nowhere, and then you can also read it backwards because there is nowhere to hide. So it's supposed to be like a loop to hide because there is nowhere to hide. So I was able to express the emotion, and mostly I would say the eyes, and it was this that really did it for me. It was the red points on like the, kind of what I would say like these energy beams coming into this person. But my mom looked at it, and she was able to, maybe it was just because she was my mom, but she was able to look at it and go, yeah, I know exactly what's going on in this picture. And, like this was the time when blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, that was it. And so, you're able to show someone like, this is what I was going through. And if you've been through this same thing, like this is what it feels like, but I made it to the other side. So I think that this kind of artwork is, and what I always like to say is art doesn't have to be beautiful to be art. I think sometimes that's actually self-defeating if depending on what kind of artwork you're trying to do, because the purpose of art is to pull us from one place to another. And sometimes a lot of times there's valleys that you've got to go through, and there's little spots of hell that you have to walk through. But do we want to camp out on those things forever? No. But if you're an artist that is stuck in one of those places, then your art's never going to, if you only camp out on the sad stuff, you're never going to push through. You have to push through the emotion, and that's what the art is helping you do. It's helping you walk through those places almost physically, so that you can get through to the other side. Because most people spend their life avoiding an emotion. It'll come down the pipe, and if you don't like it, you will close your eyes, you will try to push it back, you'll try to shove it away, and really what it's saying is you've got to eat me and cry me out. And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. But it will not kill you to eat it, and it will not kill you to cry it out. But you have to eat it. And so, when you eat your pain, when you eat your sadness, and you allow it to come, however you're going to cry it out, whether it's in a dance or a poem or a picture or a song or a clay figure you're making or whatever, then the emotion is gone now, and you don't have to dwell in it anymore, but you have to process it. Okay, so the next thing we're talking about is morality and purpose in art. So I'm going to pull this off. I'm really sad that my dog ate my whiteboard eraser, or my whiteboard marker. Oh, well, I'll have to get another one. I'll probably just use my notebook today if I'm going to write up any notes for you guys. So let me turn this really quick. Okay. So when we are talking about morality in the arts, your art does not have to be moral, no more than you have to be a moral person. However, if your art is not moral, or leading people towards a place of morality, your art will it will cause people to self-destruct, and you have to be okay with that. I am not here to tell people that you should be moral. I think that you have to make that decision for yourself. But what you do have to look at is, okay, I'm a part of a society in which, especially if you are in a Western society, art that is produced, and content, because I would say that there's a difference between art and content, right? Content's produced every single day, and art, I think, is something that comes along only once in a while, because there aren't as many artists. There's a lot of content creators, but there's not as many artists. Art, like we've said, is something that connects the dots, has deeper thoughts, all these different things. But those can all be negative too. That you can make a piece of art that is very dark and very dangerous to the soul. You can make a piece of art that will cause people to have deeper and darker thoughts. And so you have to be okay with that as an artist if that's something that you want to do, and you have to recognize that you are what kind of thing you are creating and sending out into the universe. Do you want to do that? Do you want to build more monsters, or do you want to build more heroes? That's completely up to you, but you do have to sit with that for a while, because what you draw and what you create, what you do, it actually is important. You're not just doing it arbitrarily, right? Someone who draws a monster and post it somewhere, there may be a child who comes across that drawing and has nightmares about that monster for the rest of their life. Now, that is something that you as the artist would have to be okay with. It's just I think a lot of times people don't think about themselves that way. They don't think about the butterfly effect. You are, whatever you do, you are, and even if you are just drawing, like let's say you're producing terrible, awful art, and it never leaves your studio, but it's in your head and it's in your brain and it's in your energy. That's gonna that will get spread around to whomever is with you, because that you carry it in your vibes. You just do. So let's see. But so when you have art that is moral, so when I say moral, what I'm talking about is something that is constructive, something that is because you can have destructive art, right? Like I could create an art piece that is me. Let's say I had like a schoolhouse in a piece of artwork, and in the artwork, whatever it was, whether it's a song, a painting, or whatever, I wanted to show it like being burned and pillaged, and that was my art. So that's a destructive piece of artwork. Does it connect some dots? Yeah. Does it make you have deeper thoughts? Probably. Could it move someone to action? It possibly could. Does it have some kind of meaning? Yes. And then does it have a purpose? Well, it's showing my derision, right? And my hatred towards something. So in a way it kind of does. And then if you were to draw or to make something that's completely the opposite, where you're showing something where there's a school of children flourishing, then does that connect the dots? Yes. Does that produce deeper thoughts? Yes. Does that inspire? Does it move to action? Does it have meaning and purpose? Yes. So, you can have them on both sides. You just have to decide which direction you want to go. It's as simple, guys, as this. Do you want to go up or do you want to go down? And yes, sometimes there are things where you're in the gray area, but even in the gray area, you're moving. There's some art pieces that I'm going to produce that are going to be rather scary for me to produce, because they deal with some very dark emotion, but it's still moving somewhere. It's going towards something. So I'm always making sure that no matter how low and dark things are in my artwork, it will always continually, as the art progresses, it will move upwards, because that's the direction that I want to go. If you're stagnating in the dark, guess what happens? Because of gravity, because of the flow of gravity, you will always end up just sinking further and further downward. If you're not fighting against the flow of things, you will go further downward. So that's why you always should be, if you want a constructive society where things continually get better, you need to be making and producing art that is working through things to go towards an upward projection. You don't want to be going down. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting too is that in today's society, people are really trying to say, like, there is no more purpose, so we might as well just do whatever the heck we want. If that's true, we can no longer have real art, because art is always, it always has some sort of purpose. It's to make you feel something. It's to make you better or worse. It's to, there is always some sort of purpose behind art, even if it's just to be pretty or just to be ugly. You can't really have purposeless art unless you want to produce nothingness. And so what I wanted to show you guys was this visual demonstration that I have. Oh, I forgot to grab water for this. I'm going to have to go grab water. Oh, I love you. Okay, I'll be right back, guys. I'm just going to grab some water for my paints. Oh, yeah, I can use a shell. This was a shell which my mother picked up for me on the beach a very long time ago, and I kept it, and it broke a little bit this year, which I was sad about, but I kept it forever. But I'm going to put my water in here for my paints. Oh, and I have, where's my little white paint thing? Hello. There it is. Alright. Okay, I will be right back. I have a little water here. Okay. So, I better close this or the doodle's going to get in here. We have a dog named Doodle. Alright. So, when you are and this is what it always cracks me up. I was talking with my mom about this last night. When you're in elementary school, everything is hands to yourself, be nice, be kind to your neighbor. We don't say those words, right? And then as soon as we get to middle school, what is it? Sex education, books with cuss words in them. And I am not saying that there should not be, I'm not a prude, and I don't actually mind the cussing. This is the thing that I would say to people: earn your cuss words, because those are very powerful words, and if you're using them incorrectly, they lose their power. Some people are just, they want to throw them around and throw them on everything, and a lot of times I think it's because of pain that's undealt with, and pain that's, that there's actually a scientific study that they did. I think they've done a couple of these, where when you use cuss words, it actually releases the chemicals in your brain that help you deal with pain, with physical pain. And so I think that a lot of times people who have emotional pain overuse cuss words because it helps them deal with emotional pain that they're not dealing with. So they use those words to help make them feel strong. But that's not actually real strength. That's just, it's in another avoidance tactic. So, but when you've earned your cuss words, what I would say is that you have been through something like, if you are an army, if you're in the army and you've seen people die right in front of you, you've earned your cuss words. If you are someone who has gone through extreme physical or emotional abuse, you've earned your cuss words. If you're someone who's dealing with, straight up evil, you've earned your cuss words. And so I'm not against people using cuss words. What I'm against is the overuse of them and making them nothing and making them seem very childish, and so then they've lost their power. And so to the people who are actually trying to use a cuss word now, they just seem like middle schoolers, and that's I don't think that should be allowed as a or not allowed, but I don't think that should be encouraged. As a poet, I think that people need they need to have as many words as they can to be able to express themselves. But once you do something like that where you just make it silly and dirty and whatever, then you're robbing people, is what I think. So okay, anyway, we have right here this is a art palette, and when you are if you're an elementary school teacher or you're around elementary school students, what do you always say? Don't mix your colors, right? Because each of these colors is a separate color, and if we blend them together, it's going to make brown. We always say that, right? So we encourage our children, clean your brush between each thing and don't let the boundaries cross. And then what do we tell, what are we telling people nowadays? In college and in our, in kind of the day-to-day sphere, oh, just blend everything together. It doesn't even matter anymore. Boundaries, there's no such thing as boundaries. There's no such thing as man and woman. There's no such thing as good or evil. There's no such thing as bad or good art. There's no such thing as, as even life or death. It's just all relative. It's just all, blended together. And then so what ends up happening is we get a really ugly picture. So let's visually demonstrate this, because I'm all about visual demonstrations and about making things simple. I think that you need to be both complicated and simple. Sometimes you need to go in and confuse the people and be super complicated, and then other times you need to go in and be very, very simple. And so for me, as someone who's a poet, and I'm getting ready to share more of my poetry, I wear certain things like my hat or my coat as it's like a barrier, and that's my complicated, mysterious part. And then, but always I want to wear something that's very simple, like sneakers or a white T-shirt or something like that. So you can tear off whatever you have that's complicated and go, aha! But it's all quite simple, because you should not be trying to withhold things from people. I want to share things with people. I want people to understand. That's what an artist should do. An artist should not be sitting there all posh and going, don't you wish you understood like me? You need to be able to complicate things when you need to complicate them, make them hard, make them mysterious, so that people work through things and understand. And then also, if they need help, just make it simple. Always try to make it simple. So anyway, because life is both simple and complicated, and everything is paradox. So when we have good boundaries, though, so here's some purple, and this is going to be an awful drawing because I can't get in the front here. Maybe I should sit on the floor. So I have just my purple, right? So with just my purple, I could do, let's see what I want to draw. Okay. So with just my purple, I could start doing, some purple petals like this, right? It kind of actually looks pinky. I feel like Bob Ross. And no. And then, then I can have a green stem, because in nature we have separate colors, right? We have a definite distinction of color, okay? So that's a boundary. I have color boundaries, right? I have one color and another color. So we have definites there. There's absolute purple, absolute green. And then I have, if I have the sun color, let's say, and I could even mix two colors for the sun, because the sun has both a little bit of yellow and a little bit of orange. So, you've got this over here, and it's very separate from what's going on down here, right? We have the boundary of sky versus earth, and of course, this is going to be awful because my things are going to be all Willy Wonka wonky because I'm not much of a painter and I haven't painted in a very long time. But I'm trying to show you that there's a distinction between yes, I did. Can you tell? I did. I watched a lot of PBS growing up. But there's this boundary. There's boundary between sky and earth, and then we could have, like the sky color here. And then we could have the grass color here. And this is all only possible because I am washing my brush between each thing, and I am creating boundaries. Now let's say that, because nowadays what people want to do is say, oh, there's no boundaries. One color is not much different than another. Look at my OCD friends here, hang on. One color is not much different than another. Who cares anymore? There's not really any good or bad. There's no real purpose to it. Don't even try to draw a picture. Just do whatever. doesn't this look like a toddler's scream? I feel like I could make this could be an art piece called Toddler's Scream. So then we just start, whatever, and eventually this would just be a big puddle of blech. And this is why the modern art scene and why the modern millennial, why the modern child is so out of control. There are no boundaries. Okay? This is literally a visual demonstration of the lack of morality. This right here. Because without any boundaries, without any yes or no or good or bad, that is what you have. You can have something, but it's not going to be beautiful. And then what people want to do is say, now I will redefine beauty. This is beauty. Is this beautiful? No, it is not. And don't tell me that it is, because it's not. I can make something that is beautiful. Okay? And then I can make something that is not beautiful. And just bleh, all over the place. And that make it brown. Blah, 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 blah. You cannot, by your words alone, redefine what beauty is. That will never be the case. Because this doesn't speak to the soul. Whereas something like this, like let's say your child draws a heart for the very first time for you. That's going to speak to your soul. I don't care if their art mechanics is a little off. They're trying to draw something that has purpose, We need to come away from the lack of boundaries and the lack of morality and all this loud screaming. Because all this is loud screaming. Saying, I want to do what I want to do and nobody's going to tell me any different. That's what this is. Okay? So you have to come away from this because this is childish, right? We want childlike, not childish. So come away from this and come towards something with order. Unless you want to be defiant and say, nope, I want what I want. I am going to be the screaming toddler and I am just going to call this beautiful. And I'm going to live here forever. So it's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do. But when you are, when you're thinking about, when you're thinking about your artwork, what is your artwork going towards? Is it going towards something that is beautiful, or is it going towards something that is destructive, or just plain old ugly? Do we want to have ugly souls or beautiful souls? All right, so let's see. So today's art recommendation is going to be, oh yeah, I already thought about this. It's called Hadestown. It's a folk opera. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I'm actually working on a project with some high schoolers for it. We're really excited about it. So we're doing a choreographed dance, and we're going to be filming a music video to Hadestown. So if you want to catch up on some of that stuff, we're going to be posting on my dance channel, which I can let you guys know. I got to put all this in my show notes today. Hello to whoever just jumped on. I'm sorry you came in at the end. But we will have, also I'll link to that. And then there's two versions of Hadestown. There is the live version, which is amazing and has some more scripted stuff in it. And then there is there's the recorded version, which I've mostly listened to the recorded version, honestly. I need to go back through and listen to the live version. But there is a illustrated work of the song Wait For Me from Hadestown, which is a beautiful piece. And I can link to the description for that as well. And my health tip for today is salads. I've been on a big salad kick for a while. But I think that if you can have one good big salad a day, like have a couple other things as well throughout the day, but if you can make yourself have one big salad a day, and especially when you're working on art and you're like a nervous muncher like me, if you can have a big huge salad to munch on, you can pack yourself full, and it's actually a good thing for you, because it gives you your fiber and it makes you feel full. I'm someone who, like, when I sit down to work, I have to have something to munch on or drink. So I usually have either tea or cocoa. But yeah, big salads, and keep yourself, I really do believe that as an artist, you need to be keeping yourself healthy, because our brains are the main thing that we're using, and we want to keep those brains nice and healthy. So All right, well, I love you all very much. Oh my goodness, look, I did it. It's 59 something. Let's see if we can get perfectly to 60. I'm so OCD about that kind of stuff. But anyway, so thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that this made any sense. If anything didn't make sense, let me know, and I will try to clarify. Sometimes I have an idea and I have a hard time using verbal communication to get it out, which is why I use several different art forms to get my stuff out. But yeah, I'm very, very excited about these live streams. So next week, hopefully, I will have the animal family for us to start going through. It's an old family about, or it's an old book about a family that kind of all adopts each other, and they're just a bunch of stragglers, and I love that book. So I am really looking forward to going through that with you guys. All right, peace, cheers, and love. I love you all, and I will see you next Tuesday, 8 o'clock.